Why was Soviet infantry defenseless at 800 meters? The answer was the British L-1 and the Belgian FAL. 30 years later, the Soviet response became the primary instrument for the siege of Sarajevo. But in the late 1950s, engineers designed it solely to close a tactical gap against NATO. NATO shooters dictated the engagement. They occupied positions far beyond the reach of return fire. The sharp crack of L-1 single shots echoed across open terrain. NATO troops fired the heavy 7.62 by 51 mm cartridge. This ammunition maintained a lethal trajectory at extreme distances. The Soviet AK-47 fired a lighter 7.62 by 39 mm intermediate round. Past 400 meters, these bullets lost velocity and dropped sharply. A NATO squad could sit back and target Soviet formations. The infantry had no weapon to touch them. Moscow realized that specialized sniper teams could not cover a broad front. The solution required mass deployment. One designated marksman in every motorized infantry squad had to carry the new rifle. The Soviet General Staff drafted the technical requirements. Moscow's requirements materialized in this deal. 3 years of testing concluded with the unexpected victory of a sporting rifle engineer against established military design bureaus. SVD Dragunov adapted his Olympic target designs between 1958 and 1963. The Soviet Army officially adopted his weapon on July 3, 1963. The new SVD fired the heavy 7.62 by 54 mm cartridge. Soldiers looked through the PS-01 optical sight. The reticle displayed a distinct curved rangefinder scale. Crates containing the weapon were distributed to every motorized infantry platoon. U.S. military intelligence issued a $25,000 bounty for a single captured weapon. The first real field test of the new platoon standard occurred in 1972 during the Vietnam War. $25,000 for an intact rifle. Adjusted for modern inflation, that bounty exceeds $170,000. Washington paid for the fear of a single technology. North Vietnamese Army snipers brought the weapon into the jungle. The operator framed a U.S. patrol inside the PS-01 scope. He aligned the average human silhouette with the curved rangefinder scale. Distance calculation reached up to 1,000 meters. He squeezed the trigger. 10 rounds left the magazine in seconds, accurately striking out to 800 meters. The primary targets were radio operators and field officers. The goal was the instant destruction of the tactical command chain. American snipers carried Winchester Model 70 and Remington M40 bolt-action rifles. Expectation: precision hunting platforms. Reality: heavy tropical humidity formed condensation directly on the steel bolts, causing consistent firing delays and jams. Some Marines wrote home requesting their personal hunting rifles to replace the issued gear. The Soviet semi-automatic design ignored the climate entirely. Water and mud did not stop the firing cycle. When the conflict ended, Beijing acquired captured samples from the battlefield. The reverse engineering process resulted in 2 Chinese clones designated Type 79 and Type 85. In the Asian jungles, the rifle suppressed scattered patrols. In the Afghan rocks, it locked down entire gorges. The Chinese clones remained in the rear, but by December 1979, the Soviet 40th Army rolled into Afghanistan. Here, the SVD found its perfect tactical environment. The Hindu Kush mountain range features peaks rising above 4,000 meters. Elevation changes dictated a new combat geometry. Vertical engagements made 400 meters the baseline distance for any firefight. Standard infantry weapons failed at this scale. The AK-74 assault rifle lost lethal consistency past 200 or 300 meters. The SVD compensated for this exact deficit. By 1982, military logistics finally matched tactical demands. Every deployed battle group integrated at least one designated marksman. A single operator with a PS-01 optic doubled the effective reach of a motorized rifle squad. Then the sun dropped behind the ridges. Tactics shifted entirely. Spetsnaz operators locked massive NSPU and PGN-1 night sights onto the side, dovetail rails of their rifles. These early optics added over 2 kilograms of dead weight to the weapon. The marksman pressed his eye to the heavy rubber eye cup. Inside, the first-generation electro-optical tube bathed the jagged slopes in a pale green glow. Low ambient light highlighted moving human silhouettes against the cooling stone. These bulky optics restructured counter-guerrilla operations. The first-generation tubes provided enough resolution to track targets out to 500 meters in a complete blackout. The bare mountain geography amplified the optics' visual range. Mujahideen fighters moved through the transit valleys, strictly relying on darkness for cover. Suddenly, 7.62mm projectiles struck them from upper elevations. The night provided zero concealment. Mujahideen units took continuous casualties from firing positions they could not locate. 39 paratroopers deployed against several hundred attackers. The capacity of the optic to dictate engagement parameters determined the outcome on January 7, 1988, at elevation 3,234. This peak commanded the main supply road to coast, meaning whoever held the summit controlled logistics for the entire province. Personnel from the 345th Regiment maintained their defensive perimeter for 12 continuous hours. 6 Soviet soldiers died, while opposing casualties exceeded 200. Capturing the rifle required eliminating an entire entrenched unit first. Mass capture of the weapon never materialized across 9 years of war. The weapon remained secure in Soviet hands. But Yugoslavia's collapse transferred entire state armories directly to irregular Bosnian Serb forces in the 1990s. Tribunal investigators cataloged the ballistic evidence in the corridors of the city hospital. 11,000 civilians died during the siege from April 1992 to February 1996. 1,500 were children. Violence concentrated on Zamaj od Bosna, known as Sniper Alley. Yellow signs reading Pazi Sniper marked the intersections of the avenue. Gunmen wounded 1,030 people and killed 225 on this single stretch of asphalt. Geography dictated the tactics. Mount Trebovich rises 1,600 meters directly above Sarajevo. This elevation provided an unobstructed firing angle over the entire urban grid. Irregular forces locked down a pre-war population of 500,000 without entering the city blocks. Forensic teams at Kosevo Hospital documented the results of this overwatch. Medical examiners extracted intact projectiles from civilian casualties. They measured the dimensions. Investigators matched the rounds against ballistic profiles from former Yugoslav People's Army warehouses. The extractions yielded the 7.62 by 54mm rimmed cartridge. The International Criminal Tribunal linked this specific caliber directly to the fixed positions on the mountain. Those ballistic reports from Sarajevo eventually guided investigators toward hidden offshore financial transactions. Why did Italian prosecutors in November 2025 reopen 30-year-old cases? The answer involved precise price tags attached to civilian shots across the city. The Milan inquiry analyzed private flight archives routed via Belgrade to identify suspects. Standard-issue military weapons became a recreational service for wealthy European tourists. Visitors paid up to 100,000 euros per weekend for access to the firing lines. The network maintained a rigid price list categorized strictly by the victim's age. Children commanded the highest premium, followed by adult men and women, while the elderly required zero payment. The investigation remains open. By 2011, Syrian military arsenals suffered the same structural collapse as Yugoslav depots. 4 opposing factions fought with the exact same caliber. The Syrian Arab Army held vast Soviet stockpiles. Designated marksmen deployed the rifle as standard infantry issue. Within months, frontline supply chains fractured. Captured logistics centers redistributed the domestic inventory. The Free Syrian Army seized state armories. ISIS and al-Nusra units looted captured military outposts. Kurdish YPG detachments acquired identical hardware from abandoned defensive lines. A single weapon platform armed multiple non-state actors. State allegiance vanished. The rifle became the basic currency of civil war. Tactical operations then shifted into high-density urban zones. Aleppo held a pre-war population exceeding 2 million residents. Dense residential blocks compressed the combat environment down to street width. At the Bustan al-Qasr crossing, opposing factions established overlapping kill zones. Civilians navigated open roads between government and rebel sectors for basic supplies. The distance between hostile firing positions shrank to 50 meters. Snipers executed 50-meter engagements using optics calibrated for 800 meters. According to a 2012 Time magazine field report, urban marksmanship required deep interior concealment. Concrete dust coated the floor tiles of repurposed apartments. A Free Syrian Army shooter finalized his modified firing position. He punched a fist-sized aperture through the interior block wall. The shooter sat motionless for hours in the room's deep shadow. He monitored the gap. The barrel remained hidden from exterior light. The shooter pulled the barrel away from the punched hole. Female snipers took up firing positions on the concrete rooftops of Kobani. During the heavy combat operations across northern Syria, these exact captured rifles fell into the hands of the Kurdish YPJ militia. The technical lethality of the SVD multiplied against the ideological vulnerabilities of the enemy. ISIS militants operated under the strict religious conviction that death by a female combatant permanently denied them paradise. Kurdish spotters transmitted female voices over the open radio frequencies, deliberately broadcasting their presence to induce panic across ISIS infantry lines. Pure kinetic firepower could not match the psychological disruption caused by these specific marksman units. Operating from shattered apartment blocks between 2014 and 2015, the YPJ militia systematically cleared the urban sectors. The Kurdish units pushed the enemy fighters out of Kobani. Following Kobani, the rifle returned to conventional war. 63 years ago, the SVD equipped Soviet infantry. By 2026, Kalashnikov concern lines run 3 shifts. SVD's production for the war in Ukraine increased 13 times. Inspectors lock the mechanisms. Folding steel stocks clank shut. Combat testing of the SVDM in Syria during 2015 initiated this industrial return. Engineers added a free-floating barrel. It bypasses the handguard, removing pressure on barrel geometry. The 63-year-old design still controls the 800-meter gap.